Numinous Podcast with Carmen Spaniola.
Hi there, and welcome to the Numinous Podcast, where we've been having interesting conversations with everyday folks about the mystery of life since 2014. I'm your host, Carmen Spaniola, joining you from the lands of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees, and the Esquimalt First Nations, recently known as Victoria, BC, Canada. I have a content note today, my friends, right off the top here. This is an explicit language episode, which is not really anything new. We're okay with swearing on the show. But today it's also just very honest and frank conversation about our topic. You may want to listen through headphones. It's not really one for the kids or for enjoying in the car with your parents. I mean, obviously everyone's different. Maybe you are comfortable with sex talk in mixed company, but perhaps your company isn't. Anyway, my point is, we've got a really fun episode ahead with Canada's dating coach, Chantal Heide. She has some great advice for all the women who are trying, so far unsuccessfully, to date men. Chantal is the author of several books on dating and relationships, among them the notable title, No More Assholes, Your 7-Step Guide to Saying Goodbye to Guys and Finding the Real Man You're Looking For. Now, when I hear Chantal speak about dating, I have so many clients and friends who come to mind. That said, if you're listening to the Numinous Podcast, you may be a bit more politically anarchist, explicitly anti-white supremacy, explicitly anti-patriarchy than perhaps Chantal's usual audience is. I don't know that for sure, but I think she has pretty broad mainstream appeal, and it's well-deserved. She is really a bright star in the dating landscape, but these tendencies of the average Numinous Podcast listener to be relatively more politically radical than the mainstream may combine to make you also a bit more spiritually radical, and so perhaps somewhat suspect when it comes to layering things just taking advice from white ladies around layering manifestation onto your dating approach. For instance, I get it, dear listener, I get it. We are very wary of anything that reminds us of The Secret or Ask and It Is Given or the Law of Attraction or anything that we might have applied to our dating life circa 2005. I feel you. I know. I get it. And yet, my friends, she just makes such a good case here from an attachment perspective for following these methods. If you've been hanging around here for a minute, you know that anytime we go through a life blip, like a breakup, like a divorce, for instance, we are liable to spend some time in a disorganized attachment pattern. In my course on the interpersonal neurobiology of attachment, which of course is found inside my membership site, the Numinous Network. It's called Secure, the Magical Art and Subtle Science of Attachment. In that course, I explain in detail how we can't resolve a disorganized attachment pattern from inside that trauma vortex. We need outside help, and that help often consists of people and practices. So the advice Chantal is offering today is directly related to creating practices that support your nervous system to operate in secure mode. Her quote-unquote rules and mantras and frameworks are like ballasts that keep you and your brain and your hormones and your nervous system balanced. So I find Chantal's dating approach to be a very sound one when we look at it through the lens of the interpersonal neurobiology of attachment. Plus, like I said, she's just a very engaging speaker and fascinating person, and I can't wait for you to hear her backstory and her unique advice on modern dating. So without further ado, here's Chantal. So Chantal, what identities do you lead with?
I definitely lead with the identity of teacher. It's something that I've felt inside of me for a really long time. I would say since my 20s. I've really longed to help people see the light go off inside their minds. And I get an emotional pleasure seeing them understand something And I get an even bigger emotional pleasure when they use the advice that I give them and then come back and tell me how it's changed their lives.
Hmm. You are known as Canada's dating coach. Tell us just a little bit about how you came to adopt that identity.
So there is a male dating coach from the UK called Matthew Hussey. And when I was kind of coming into this career, really thinking about it, starting to align myself and coming up with my ideas and what direction I was going to take, I came across him, and I really think that fate will bring the people that you need to see at the right time. The universe works so well in my favor. It brings me the lessons that I need to get, whether it's an impulse to turn on the TV and 5 minutes later, I get a piece of information that the next day I'm going to give to someone else. So it's always giving me the information that I need. I was driving from Ontario to Florida, and that takes you through the Virginia mountains. Now, if you've ever driven through the Virginia mountains, the radio stations go in and out. You're flipping the station every 10 minutes. And coincidentally, at just that right time, I came across Matthew Hussey on a radio station being interviewed. And it clicked with me. And I managed to listen to about 10 minutes of his interview. And it got me studying him a little bit. And because I was studying him, I saw him show up on a Canadian TV show. And I looked at him and I said to myself, why is he there? I'm Canada's dating coach, not him. He's from the UK.
I love that. That's so great. Okay, so I'm so delighted to talk to you about dating today. I have so many clients in mind. I have so many friends in mind. So these questions may seem like oddly specific in some ways. But what I really want to talk about is some of the main differences that you see when it comes to dating and the concerns, the apprehensions, the fears we might have in our 30s versus as a more mature person in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. So, how would you say there are differences there?
So interestingly enough, I've been doing this since 2015, and I've seen the differences become smaller and smaller and smaller. A difference that I would notice 10 years ago was people in their 30s were looking for somebody compatible versus people in their 50s and 60s were looking for somebody who wasn't going to reduce their finances. I have my home. I have my bank account. I don't want to lose what I've built for myself. And so 50s and 60s, you have that financial concern. I want to keep what I have versus in the 30s is I want to find somebody I can build with. But we have a shift in our culture right now. And women in their 30s are saying, I don't want to lose what I built for myself.
Oh, that's fascinating. That is definitely a shift. And it's so interesting because I'm also noticing the flip side of that, which is people who get into or get kind of caught in, let's call it an immature, a newer relationship. And they go deep fast because they're sharing expenses. Right.
Yeah.
They can't afford to be on their own anymore. So it makes sense that, like, yes, if you have built up enough that you're a girly with your own apartment, or even like, good roommates or something, but you've been able to establish yourself in your career, you got a good thing going. Yeah, I can see like not wanting to give that up. I have also seen on TikTok that the discussion is men think that they're out there competing with all of the other best men, but they're not. They're actually competing to see if they're better than being alone. Like women are like, either a great guy or I'd rather be alone. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be. Are you noticing that too? Women are choosing to be alone a bit more.
The way that they're saying it is you're not competing with other men, you're competing with my peace.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So in your books, you have foundations, these like foundational principles that apply regardless of age. And I want to take people through them. So early in the process, you recommend that women like purge and cleanse themselves of their past relationships. One of the titles, I think it's in Comeback Queen, is you got to wash that man right out of your hair, right? Totally takes us back, Gen X here. So you say that one way that women can do this is to tap into their anger. Can you
Mhm.
explain for listeners how that helps? And like, how do we tap into anger without losing faith in men generally?
Right. So what happens after a breakup is, initially we have the sensation that we miss them. If listen, we as women do our grieving early and then we get over it. They tend to feel a sense of relief and then they do their grieving, which is why we are feeling better and that's when they come back. We'll notice this every so often. And so when we take somebody back, and I'm talking about a relationship that didn't work, somebody that we shouldn't be taking back. When we take somebody that we shouldn't be taking back, is because we went through that grieving process and then we forgot the negativity and we go into reminiscing and missing those things that were positive while forgetting the things that were negative. And we have to not do that. We have to not go backwards. And the way to not go backwards is to use anger. So when you find yourself reminiscing, I miss his kisses. Well, I find somebody who kisses me like that. You have to go, wait a second. He did this. Fuck you. You might have to bleep that out. I don't know your
Yeah,
audience,
we
but
we swear
that's
here.
that's how it has to be. Angry, forceful. I'm not going to stop seeing what you did that was wrong. I'm not going to stop seeing what you did that didn't work for me. I need to remember that. I need to remember it with a passion. Fuck you, so that I'm not repeating this pattern of getting into a relationship who does these things. I need to be angry about that. I need to keep an eye out for it and I need to never go backwards so that if he comes back crawling at my door, wanting me back, I'm not in a state of reminiscing, going, yeah, I do want your kisses back. It's no, you did this. Fuck you.
Hmm. And so, okay, here on the Numinous podcast, we've done a lot of episodes on embracing rage. And I think a lot of us are pretty comfortable with the like really strong full body fuck you. And yet there can be this place where it's like the man just doesn't exist for me. Or like it
Right.
is really hard not to slip into the all men are
Yeah.
garbage kind of thing, right? And so, especially when we look around and we do see so much rampant misogyny in so many different areas of life. So, how do we balance the like, I need to feel mad so I can stop being sad without bringing the energy of like, try me into our dating life?
So be mad about the things that those individuals did. Be mad about that. Stay mad about that so that you never allow it back into your life. But recognize that you're somebody who didn't do those things. So there's other people who didn't do those things. And I like to bring it to the analogy of acquiring a certain make and model of vehicle. When you got that vehicle, you suddenly started seeing it everywhere in a way that you never did before. And that's what good men are. When you become familiar with the model, because you've immersed yourself in the knowledge of what the model looks like, because you've examined it long enough, you start spotting it more frequently. But it was always out there in that quantity. And using the no kissing for 3 months dating rule helps you insure yourself against someone else who's going to make you this angry. So, no kissing, no sex, no sleepovers, no exclusivity. You're competing with my peace. The moment I feel you're detracting from my peace is when I let you go.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're going to talk about the 3 month no kissing rule, but also what you just said about like you study this make and model, you study the model. And one of the things I experience a lot is like women will tell me what's going on in their marriage, what's going on in their relationship. And I am shocked. And I have to just like kind of manage my face a little bit because I'm so immersed in a respectful, anti-patriarchal, anti-oppressive relationship. And I have so thoroughly divested from toxic masculinity. Like I don't read their books. I don't watch their TikToks. I don't give them my money. I don't give them my vote. I don't give them any of my attention. And so it's pretty rare that I come across someone that is just like so inconsiderate or so self-absorbed. And what I see is I know like so many respectful, loving, anti-oppressive feminist men. So I think that's a really great flip of the script is you divest from the bullshit and then you study the make and model of the real man that you really want to have. That feels liberatory. Yeah, that feels liberatory.
You have to have, if you're going to seek a relationship, you have to have a belief in yourself and a belief in goodness, that the goodness does exist. And it really aligns with manifestation. What you believe in, what you focus on is what appears in your path. And if you don't believe goodness exists, you literally won't see it when it's in front of you. So a person who doesn't believe they're ever lucky doesn't notice the $20 bill on the sidewalk.
Mm. There's also another thing lifted up on TikTok. Thanks, TikTok. I love spending time there.
Right?
I've just like curated such a great algorithm for myself that you can tell how much a woman loves herself by the man she chooses.
Yes,
Mm,
absolutely. Absolutely. Look, my husband was raised Baptist. My husband chose, for the most part, women he loved to have sex with. I was number three. Number one was him going, I'm 20 years old. I haven't popped my cherry yet. This girl has been after me forever. Why not? And so he had sex with her 10 times. And then he was like, look, like, I really made it clear I don't want a relationship and I don't want you to fall for me. I'm shutting this down. And then waited again. And then he met his first wife and then waited again. And then he met me. And yet, this type of man is fully accepting of his girlfriend, his wife being a stripper because he's not controlling, he's not insecure. He doesn't want a parent-child dynamic, which is patriarchy, I control you. He wants a peer-peer dynamic, which is equality. And one thing that I say is my number one relationship rule is it's not fair to ask for anything you're not willing to do first. He's never said those words for me, but that's the lesson I learned from him by observing his behaviors. My husband gives me freedom because he wants freedom. My husband gives respect because he wants respect.
mm. You probably have to there's probably a record scratch for a couple of listeners there who were like, who's the stripper in this? Who's the stripper in this scenario? Because they may not know that about you. Do you want to just clarify that you are the stripper in this scenario? And that
Super.
was a great career for you. Do you want to say more about that?
Wonderful. I was 6 years old when I told my mom I was going to be a stripper. There's something that I call natural born strippers. Just like people are natural born musicians, natural born mathematicians, natural born dancers, we're the dancers that don't mind taking our clothes off because we're also naturally born sensual and comfortable with our own bodies. And that combination creates a natural born stripper. So why do I know so much about men? Because when I started stripping at 21, and for 20 years, I worked sober because I loved my job. I loved what I did.
Mm. So this is how you do know a lot about men. You do know a
I
lot about men. Hey, did you meet good men in the strip club?
I did, and they were my regulars because my regulars were the men who wanted relationships but were too busy because they worked so many hours. They didn't have the time to sustain the kind of relationship a woman would typically want. And so they could come once a week for a few hours and have that intimacy, that connection, the communication, the conversations, the cuddles, the person who says, You're a good man. I really appreciate you.
Mm. Mm. So you also are a strong proponent of meditation when it comes to dating, which may be a little unusual, not on the network, or sorry, not on the podcast, but in dating books, it's not necessarily something you'll see. You might see manifestation, might see visualization, that kind of thing. But I would love to know why you are such a big fan of meditation for dating.
Because meditation is important for everything. And when you are dating, are you not looking to select somebody with who you're going to have an amazing relationship? So why are you not starting today the kind of behaviors that you are required to have a successful, long-term, peaceful, zero fight relationship? And that's what I bring people to is a zero fight relationship. We choose somebody who loves us more than dysfunction. And in that relationship, we choose behaviors that are functional. And that's how we have that zero fight, zero argument relationship. We have, listen, fighting is toxic, it's abusive, it's a zero tolerance policy. It's not called a bar argument, it's called a bar fight because of the escalation into chaotic behaviors, slamming things around, throwing things across the room, yelling at the person, raising your voice. Zero tolerance. I will not do that. And I won't tolerate it being done to me because I choose communication over chaos. And argument is a lack of acceptance. I don't accept that you want to wear that. I don't accept that you want to go there. I don't accept that you don't pull your weight, that you're financially irresponsible, that you called in sick just to play video games again. We can't build a life together because of these things that you do or don't do. I don't accept that I'm paying 50-50 and doing 80% of the household chores and 90% of the child raising. And so if we take 3 months to have all the conversations, what will we argue about when we choose somebody who's aligned with our goals and values? So there's no room for arguing in a relationship when you choose the right person. Disagreements are fine. I can accept your individuality. I can accept your right to have your own opinions. Frankly, my husband's a conservative and I'm a liberal. We've accepted each other. We don't turn that topic of conversation into a fight or argument. We went, okay, you have the right to think how you want to think. And we went on with our day.
Mm, mm. You do address online dating profiles somewhat in your books, but it does seem like your philosophy is like pretty social and in-person oriented. Since many of us, and I know many listeners of this podcast are still COVIDing, and our social circles maybe are just not as big as they were 5 years ago because of the ongoing impacts of that lockdown. Um, What's some advice you'd give to women who are like, because we got a lot of these listening to the podcast who are just like, they've got the sleepies, they're cozy, they're snug as a bug in a rug right now, they're trapped on their couch and they don't want to leave. They've got their peace. They've got their
Yes.
peace, but they also want to attract a mate. So
Mhm.
what do you say to those ones who, they say they want partnership, but the getting out there is hard. Meeting people is hard.
Everything you actually want requires effort and courage. So, how much do you actually want it? And here's the thing, I make it easy. So, go online. Go online. Don't respond to anybody who hasn't made it obvious that they read your profile. If they're not connecting on something that you've said about yourself, they're just looking at bodies. And I'm not looking for somebody looking for some body. I'm looking for the man who's looking for me. So, unless he's indicating he's actually looking at me as a human being and not just my body, I'm not responding. So, no wasted time when you're doing your online conversations. When you do start conversing with somebody, the moment it gets interesting, say, hey, this is really interesting. Let's take the conversation to a phone call if you don't feel like looking a bit cuter than you look right now, or a FaceTime if you just came back from somewhere and you're still feeling your beans. And so get, in person, online, phone call or FaceTime. If you like the vibe, don't be pen pals. Don't stay on the phone. Don't stay FaceTiming. See if they're willing to show up for you and make it easy. My first 2 dates are a beverage and a walk. Be yourself. People say, how should I dress? And I say, dress comfortably. Be yourself. If they're not accepting that you like to wear sweatpants 90% of the time, showing up in sweatpants on your first date, if they're turned off by that, bye-bye boy. Because I'm not going to be in a relationship with somebody where I have to put up a facade. So be yourself and make it short and sweet. It doesn't take much to show up at a coffee shop that's 10, 15 minutes away to grab a coffee, a tea, a bubble tea, a smoothie, whatever funky place you want to go to in an interesting neighborhood and walk around for a little bit. I mean, listen, if you're stuck on the couch, you need a walk. So let him take you for a walk and see how he is. It's a 10, 15, 20 minute, at most commitment, 5 minutes if you don't like him, and just have that beverage and a walk. And if you like the first vibe check, then have another vibe check. And if he passes the first two vibe checks, then you can take it to something a little more extensive that takes a little bit more time, a bit more investment.
Yeah, you have good ideas about like have an activity where you don't have to look at each other. Sitting across the table for like a meal is like way too much. So like I could imagine going to the aquarium, going to botanical gardens. You have a ton of ideas, but you also, okay, so you have parts where you talk about going to a party and like you only know one person there. And then like you get invited to another party. Once again, you only know one person. And even though you've been a stripper, so you're like a professional small talker as well as deep talking, but like you're good at getting people engaged. It's different. Like that, you're up power when you're in the stripper position in some ways, right? But going to a party, that just feels like I feel myself contracting right away. So, uh, how did you get over your fear of like not knowing anyone in a party? What's your technique for mingling?
I had to build my confidence. Even as a stripper, I had to build my confidence because for the first several years, I wasn't going to people and saying, "Do you want to dance?" I would do my stage shows and I would sit where the dancers would sit and I would wait for people to come up and ask me if they wanted to dance. And every now and then I'd work up the courage to walk around the room and make eye contact with people and see if anybody seemed interested in me or would usher me over because I was nearby. And I learned to be confident in the stripping industry and in the real world kind of simultaneously. And I had examples both outside the stripping world and inside the stripping world. The example inside the stripping world was this girl that was working at a club that I worked at, and she didn't have my looks. And I don't want to say this and sound mean, but if I compared her to myself and the two of us to what people call conventional, she didn't have curves. She was very square. She was very bodybuilder. She was short and she had shorter hair and she didn't seem as feminine, even in feminine clothing. And yet she was making money. She would go on the floor, chit chat somebody 2 minutes, off she goes in the VIP. Come back, chit chat 2 minutes, off she goes in the VIP. I'm like, why am I sitting here? And she's making all this money. What is she doing? What's the magic mojo? And I asked her, I said, what do you do? She goes, I just asked them, what's your name? Where are you from? Do you want to go for a dance? Like it was that easy. They just wanted us to start the conversation, make them feel like a human being for a couple minutes, and then they were good to go. And so that's how I gained my confidence on the floor in the stripping room by having the ambition to make as much money as this girl did. I needed to know how she did it, and I emulated her. When it came to the real world outside the stripping world, I had a boyfriend who had built his confidence by faking it till he made it. And I studied him, how he held his body language, how he held eye contact with people, the way he communicated. Now, at the time, I was that person that if you brought me to a party and the only person I knew was the one who brought me, initially people will come up and chit chat with you a little bit, especially the host, but then people go to their familiar places with their familiar people, and me, the stranger, is left standing on the sidelines. Now, my social anxiety meant sweaty palms, stomach in a knot, dry mouth, trembling body, pounding heart. Last thing I wanted to do was go up to somebody and start a conversation because I don't know if I could get the words out. I was desperate for people to come and talk to me because as soon as they did, I flowed because they opened the gates and I could have a conversation with anybody who wanted me to, but I couldn't start the conversation. So I got a book called How to Work a Room, and it was about networking. And it taught me how to break the ice. And all I needed to do was use courage in addition to the tools. And I was living in Montreal. We were living in a triplex in the section near the universities. And so the person who lived on the ground floor was a university student. And he was like, "Hey, my friend's having a party. Do you want to come?" I'm like, "Yeah." And that voice in my head, that's so much smarter than me, said, "This is your chance because they don't know you. This is your chance to create a new persona. This is your chance to introduce a new person." And I went, "Yeah, the person I want to introduce is confident. The person I want to introduce is self-assured. The person I want to introduce can start a conversation." So, what does that book teach you? It teaches you that everywhere you go, you have something in common. At a party, the question is, how do you know the host? That's your icebreaker. And then from there, you keep asking questions because when you ask a question, you don't have to think about what to say.
Mm. Oh my gosh, so good. How do you know the host? It's so obvious, but it's so good. And you just kept asking that same question to every single person. Bounce, bounce, bounce around the room. Little bunny, how do you know the host? Oh, chitty chat, chitty chat. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Exactly.
You also have this move where you give him your number. If he insists on, giving you his, you take it, but you don't call.
No.
Your approach is like you keep things fairly short and sweet on texting and like basically don't call him. Like what's the deal with this advice?
I made the initial approach by crossing the room, starting the conversation, which let him know I'm available, the door is open, he's welcome to step through. So that's what I did. Now, him insisting I call him is him going, keep working for me, keep dancing for me, keep making things happen for me because I lack work ethic. I want a man who has work ethic. The man who's interested in me and has work ethic is going to come and get me because I let him know he could.
I love it. I love it. We're not chasing. We're not doing that. No, I love it. Okay. The moment everyone's waiting for. The no kissing rule. Okay,
Yeah.
your 3-month no kissing rule is like next level discipline with dating. And when I first heard it, I like, I had to laugh because it's like the opposite of everything I ever did. And, but I think it would be interesting. I know that with my husband, it still would have worked. Like he, in other ways has already indicated, like, because I had a sort of stable of other men at the time, and he was like, "I'm playing a long game here." Like he was competing with all of the other men, and he knew it. But this 3-month no kissing rule is so compelling, especially in the age of we've had, whatever, a decade or so of apps now, which have really sexualized dating, like almost hypersexualized dating, right? So tell us what the 3-month no kissing rule is and why is it so effective?
So, first of all, you need to understand yourself. And so you need to know where you are in your life. Are you still in hookup mode? In other words, are you still satisfying curiosities? Do you still have some kinks you want to try? Are there still body types you want to try out? Are you still in the mindset where if an opportunity comes up to have some fun, you want to partake in the fun? Then you're not ready for a long-term relationship yet. I don't recommend you start looking for a long-term relationship yet. Understand yourself because the better you understand yourself, the better you're able to educate the long-term partner you start a relationship with about who you are. And that includes even understanding your goals. Do you want to get married or not get married? Do you want to have kids or not? What is the timeline on those plans so that when you are dating, you know yourself instead of not knowing yourself, meeting somebody? This is where we are decentering other people. Centering yourself means understanding yourself. If you don't understand yourself and you start a relationship, what are you going to do? Revolve around the other person, their wants, their desires, their goals, their plans. There's no identity in you, you're wrapped around them. So I recommend you take the time to explore yourself, understand yourself. And when you're ready for a long-term relationship, because you're done your curiosity phase, then you switch over to the no kissing for 3 months dating rule. No kissing, no sex, no sleepovers, no exclusivity. You're not blurring the lines, meaning you're not confusing your process.
Chantal, it sounds really hard.
Which part, which the impulse control?
Yeah, the
Absolutely.
impulse control. Like
Yes.
it got so sexy. My
Yeah.
husband and I were sexting within minutes of having exchanged numbers. Like I just, this sounds really difficult. What's the thing that people struggle with?
So first of all, Carmen, I don't discount luck or intuition. And some people will say, we kissed, had sex on the first date. We have a great marriage. What do you say to that? I say good, because good is always good. And that's the goal. The goal is good, a good relationship, to feel good in your relationship, to have a good partner. So good is always good. But if your history is break up in tears, break up in tears, break up in tears, luck and intuition isn't working in your favor. You're buying lottery tickets, but they're losers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, luck and intuition is not working in your favor. If that was what was going to help you, it would have worked by now, probably. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So no sleepovers even. Why not even sleepovers?
I don't want encroachment. I want to know that when I ask for space, you give it respectfully. I want to think about the day at the end of the day because guys who are trying to manipulate you will want to take root and not give you a chance to think. So we had a full day together. Now you have to go home. Oh, but it's late. Go home. Oh, but I live far. Get a hotel room. But I had some drinks. Call an Uber. I want to think at the end of the day because those red flags, if they happen, that were pushed to the back of my mind because the day continued on, I want those red flags to come to the forefront. I need to examine the day.
Excellent. And that seems to be the crux of it for me. It makes so much sense, this idea, because then you will know just how coercive this man can be. Does he receive your no? Does he
Right.
receive the no? And does he receive it as, okay, so what exactly when is 90 days from now? So how do you have the conversation? Okay, so you're having you've had your two vibe checks, let's say your 20 minutes or sooner. Like when do you tell them and how do you say this?
First, you need to have the fundamentals values conversation. Those are those things that you want that you're not going to give up. I want to get married. I'm going to resent you if I get in a relationship with you and then find out you don't want to get married. I want to have kids. I'm going to resent you if we start a relationship and then I find out you don't want kids. So I'm not going to start a relationship. I'm not going to get emotionally invested and then find out how we are not aligned. So, first is the alignment. Are we aligned on goals and timelines? I'm 25 years old. I want to have kids by the time I'm 32. What about you? And that's how you do it. This is why I say understand yourself before you start dating because you are presenting, you're not asking. You're presenting. Hey, I just want to make sure you understand. I really intend to get married and have kids, and this is my timeline. What about you? And you're seeing if they're on the same timeline. If they say, well, like I'm really not sure, then just walk away. You're not here to convince anybody or change their mind or change anybody, period. We're not here to change people. We're here to pick the people who are right for us. So let's say he did say that he's aligned. And by the way, doesn't mean it's true. That's why we do 3 months. That's why when we meet their people, we ask important questions. Hey, what makes you think Tony would be a good husband? If Tony said, I don't want to get married, you're going to be met with a look of confusion. So you're going to make sure you're not going to be shy. When you meet their people, you ask important questions because a user, a manipulator, counts on you being too shy to ask those questions. When you meet the mom, hey, does Tony bring a lot of girls by? Because that can be a scam too, by the way. They're counting on you making assumptions. Don't make assumptions. Let's say they're aligned. Now you do the vibe checking. Do I like him? Do I want to see him again? Okay, I'm going to have that no kissing for 3 months conversation because I don't want him to move in on me. I want to have that conversation before he moves in. Because if he moves in before I tell him, now it's rejection. I want to make it clear when I tell him I'm using a no kissing for 3 months dating rule, it's not about him. This is about my desire to make sure I'm making the right choices, making an informed decision when I pick a long-term partner. I don't want to pick somebody and then find out they're a mistake.
So even before you think like they're going to move in for a kiss, you're like, well, before that, you're like, hey, just so you know, I have this 3 month no kissing rule so that you're not rejecting them in case there's a moment where it's like, oh, like, look, we're Lady and the Tramp all of a sudden. And we're like, that's not the moment, right? What do you say to people though who are like, what if I don't like how he kisses? What if I should have sex with him first before I know if I'm going to, because what if that's not compatible?
Okay, so kiss a liar or cheater, have sex with a liar or cheater, get emotionally invested with somebody who's lazy and selfish and irresponsible. That's the gambling method. That's your lotto ticket. Go buy your lotto ticket and then find out if it's a winner or a loser, if that's how you want to do it. But I'm going to take the man who took 3 months to show me how consistent he is with communication skills. Communication isn't just talking, it's also listening. Is he listening to what I say? Applying that information to see happiness on my face? That's a trait that translates into the bedroom. So this man who showed me patience and grace and communication and a desire to see happiness on my face, I'm not going to be so disrespectful that at the end of 3 months, I don't tell him what I like, and then I hold it against him that he didn't read my mind. If that first kiss isn't to my liking, and by the way, we talked about kiss style before we got to the kiss. I don't like wet and sloppy. I don't like a lot of tongue. If he says, oh, well, I really like a lot of tongue, I'm going to be like, we're going to go our separate ways because we're not compatible physically. We're going to have those conversations before we get physical, like any smart person would do. If you're exploring a kink, are you not having conversations with people about how to do the kink before you get in bed? Why do we have a dating culture that lacks communication? It doesn't make any sense, but it's been removed from us women because we're taught to be dolls, not people when it comes to dating. Just let them kiss us, let them hop on us, and then find out if he's a loser because you're a body before you're a person. And I refute that. I have unsubscribed from that dating culture. I say, I'm a person first. And if you're not going to see that and actually like me, I'm not picking you because I'm not looking for a hookup. I'm not looking for somebody I don't keep. I'm looking for somebody I do keep. So this man who spent 3 months being consistent, listening, applying to see the happiness. When we have that first kiss, if I don't quite like the style, I break the kiss, but not the intimacy. And I say this, let me show you what I like. So soft, so sexy, so sultry. And he's like eating it up because, of course, he wants to know what I like. He showed me for 3 months he wants to know what I like. That's not going to change just like that.
Ah, I love it. Yeah, we're not kissing strangers. We're watching for the guy who lights up at our happiness. Yes.
Man, the
Oh yeah,
man.
not the guy. Right. You
Exactly.
talk a lot about the difference between guys and men.
We need to have that vernacular because if not, you saw on TikTok, you've seen in social media, the language is men are shit, men are crap, men don't treat us well, men are not pulling their weight, men want us to do everything. But we're not distinguishing between the selfish short term thinkers that they're talking about, which is the guys, and the generous long term thinkers who aren't like that, which is the men. So if you want to turn a man into a guy, make him feel like he's never recognized, make him feel like he's never appreciated, make him feel like he's shit no matter what he does. So if we want the men to stay men, let's distinguish the men from the guys.
Right, right. Okay, so this no kissing rule brings some interesting context to dating when you have children. I think that's a big question for people. I know I had it. I was a single mother when I started dating my husband. That question of when should you introduce the kids to him is like always, I don't know, it's always touch and go. So, uh, you think people should introduce their dates to their kids sooner than later. Why is that?
Because if your kids don't like him, don't bring him home. I say, don't bring home a person like you bring home a puppy. Hey, kids, I picked a new family member. Deal with it. That's not fair.
Yeah, it really isn't. And also, I like this idea that you put forward that it's like, I have friends. Mom gets to have friends, and do you like my friend? And for this man, if you can't be friends with my kid, this is a non-starter.
If my kids don't like you, you got to go.
Yeah, very clear, very clear. What would you say to someone who introduced the kids to this man? The kids get attached to him, but then you decide, ooh, actually, this isn't, I don't see a future here. And maybe the child is asking, can we hang out with them again? Like that's a little bit sticky too. And I think a lot of people are a little worried about that. How would you respond?
So it's an age-appropriate conversation, but the way you say it is the same. You know how sometimes we move and we got to leave people behind? This is the same situation. I've moved on from this person, and that means they're no longer in our lives.
Mm, hmm. Pretty simple. Okay, so let's talk about sex then. We're
Mhm.
getting through the 3 months. We're like, it's coming. Now other apprehensions may come up, other butterflies, other concerns. I mean, it's nice to think that, okay, you've developed a genuine friendship with someone. So it seems like it should be easier then. But the more time passes, the more we can build up something in our head. And especially as an older woman, I think sex can be kind of fraught, especially those of us who are in or going through the menopausal transition. There's like physical stuff that many women experience. On the show already. We've talked about things like genitourinary syndrome of menopause, vulvar atrophy, like the things that make it tricky. It's not as easy. We don't just slide on in as much as we did when we were younger. There's the emotional stuff of our changing body, how we feel about that. There's the mental game of also in this day and age, like Gen X's, here we are. It's like there is a different culture around porn and accessibility to that. And so, like, does this man watch a lot of porn? I guess we would have had the conversation, but it's like, do they expect me to be super agile and super vocal and, you know, that rabidly into it kind of thing? So there's just like a lot of hopes, a lot of expectations, a lot of potential for you know, just tension and feeling fraught, especially if you were in like a sexless marriage or you were with a guy who couldn't make you come and you're like, oh my God, please let this be the guy that can make me orgasm. It's just a lot. So how do you assuage the fears of your clients who are older women dating who are just really worried about the sex thing?
Having the conversations. We took the time, right? Over the course of 3 months, we talked about everything. We talked about our changing bodies. We talked about our libido. We talked about what gets us off, right? We talked about the things we tried that we want to keep doing, the things we did that we don't want to do again, the things we haven't tried that we're still curious about. We talk about it all. And the thing is, I had cervical cancer when I was in my early 30s. I had a hysterectomy. I went into menopause in my 30s. I was getting hot flashes, sex was hurting. I thought I was just really stressed out because this was when my husband and I were, approaching pretty much 10 years of fighting and getting close to divorcing because we were just so angry with each other. And I thought maybe this is just stress. There's so much going on in my life. And it turned out I had already passed premenopause. I was in menopause. And like, you need estrogen because this is too early. And so I've been on estrogen for 8 years. And funny enough, a couple months ago, I decided I'm 52 years old. Let's do menopause. So I took myself off estrogen. And boy, can I tell you, my vagina clamped up like it just didn't want to exist anymore. And the last time my husband and I had sex, it was difficult for him to get me off because I was so scared of the pain that was going to come when he went from fingers to penis. And so, I had to get over my fear and I had to come into my body and let myself relax. And so I understand this. And My advice is to make a relationship about more than sex and find a person who's willing to do that. My husband is one of those people. Find the kind of man who's happy with affection and who's happy with pleasing you and who's happy with taking his time and isn't going to be frustrated that maybe he has to work a little bit harder to get you off sometimes or every time. And the signs are there. My husband, the first time we got intimate, his pants didn't come off because it was all about me. Find the man who is generous in so many ways, including physically and mentally and emotionally. Find the man who cares so much about you that it's not just about sex, it's about intimacy. And every long-term relationship, when you are living together, my advice is minimum 2 kisses a day, minimum 5 seconds each. For the same reason, no kissing for 3 months. Nobody talks about the chemicals in a kiss. I'm the first person who's talking about this, like we should be talking about it. Those kisses create chemicals that are amphetamines, aphrodisiacs, and antidepressants. Why am I going to do those drugs with a stranger and cloud my perception and have me feeling some kind of way about somebody I don't yet know, creating a castle in the sky? He's so great. No, he's not. He hasn't shown me anything yet. I feel great because he drugged me with a kiss. It's the biggest scam in dating. The kiss on your list before you know who they are when you're looking for a long-term relationship is a scam. It's selection before observation. It shuts down the red flag alert, has you rejecting other people for who? You haven't asked that question yet. It hasn't been answered. When people say no exclusivity, why not? And I say, because we ask who first, because my exclusivity is for the right person, not the wrong person. So when I use the no kissing for 3 months dating rule, I'm more likely to pick the right person because I'm not clouding my judgment. When I pick the right person, intimacy every day, minimum 2 kisses a day, minimum 5 seconds each, aphrodisiac, amphetamine, antidepressant. Think of the emotional high. I made out with my husband several times today. We might not have sex today, but I feel so close and so connected to him. And the way he's oohing and eyeing over me, it's obvious he feels so close and connected to me too.
Mm. You talk actually quite a bit in your books about intimacy without sex. Like in that 3 months, it's not like you're not being intimate. You're being intimate in so many ways. You're nuzzling, you're touching, you're cuddling, you're speaking low to each other. You are almost kissing and being like, oh, whoops, we almost broke it, ha ha ha, laugh it off, talking. But one thing you don't do is like this texting thing. You keep it pretty short and sweet. So I do know that many people, and I've experienced this myself, like we feel more courageous and brave. And science has shown that having the intermediary of communication through a phone means that we bring our inhibitions that we would normally have if we were in person. So how do you feel about sexting? How do you feel about having these conversations over text? You seem to be like, nope, we're keeping our texts short and sweet. Tell us your texting philosophy.
So, first of all, if they're trying to get your sexuality before you actually are connecting mentally and emotionally, that's what they want from you. So, if they're saying no kissing for 3 months, but what about some sexy pictures? Block and delete. He can go buy sexy pictures online. I'm not giving you my sexy pictures. And I don't want to get to know you over text. I want to know that you're willing to invest your actual time face to face with me to be a companion. I will not be somebody's time filler when they're bored.
Yeah. So smart. So smart. So, okay. There is, though, quite frankly, a lot of misogyny out there. You know, there's plenty of men who pursue women, but actually, in the final analysis, they don't really seem to like women. We see this when, like, did you see the guys on TikTok who are like, these are the average things that I like about women? And it was like, I like it when she wears pajamas. I like it when she wears, like, it was like, oh, you just like women, like, but there's a lot of men who just don't really seem to like women. So we know the good ones are out there, and yet there's so much violence against women. There's like lawmakers seeking to subjugate women. How do you handle the grief and the rage of living in a patriarchal world?
I make this patriarchal world work for me. I make it work for me. So I'm not giving my time and attention to somebody who subscribes to that. This is why I say, let them talk. Let them talk. I pay a pink tax. The world is more expensive to me because I'm a woman. The same shaving cream is more expensive. Dry cleaning a shirt that looks identical is more expensive. If I go get the same haircut, it's more expensive. So I want the kind of man who looks at me and says, you're not too expensive for me. I look for the kind of man that says, I'm willing to invest in you. I give my husband my time, my services. My husband works hard and he pays the bills in this house. I make it work for me.
Mm-hmm. Chantal, it's refreshing. The approach you take is very refreshing. How can people learn more from you?
I have books, I have audiobooks, I do one-on-one coaching. I go live on TikTok from Monday to Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time for minimum 2 hours. I have a free book that's in the link tree on my bio on TikTok and on Instagram. The free book is Fake Love Need Not Apply: How to Avoid Posers, Losers, Scammers, and Predators. I love when the trolls come up on my TikTok because I go, hey, you're inspiring me to give a book away right now. Hey, ladies, all these guys want you to get this book because they want you to recognize the worst of the worst and know how to reject them or get rid of them. This is a starter guide for you. This is the one that teaches you how to make friends. Because if you are so susceptible to the worst of the worst, which is the predators, then you need to surround yourself with people who look out for you, because predators prey on the weak. They single out the ones that are left behind. So you need to surround yourself with people so that you're not one of those. No More Assholes is your guide on how to select the right person. This is your dating methodology. This is the IKEA instructions that comes with the dresser. You want that relationship, the dresser, don't throw out the instructions. Make it easy for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got No More Assholes. Really enjoyed it. Comeback Queen, reading it on behalf of like friends that I had in mind for dating after divorce. I love your perspective, Chantal. Love the message that you're putting to the world. Your TikTok lives are super entertaining. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your wisdom today.
I appreciate you, Carmen, so much. Thank you.
If you go to canadasdatingcoach.com, you'll find you can purchase Chantal's books for instant download. She has so many of them. And I highly recommend her weekday TikTok lives. Find her on TikTok at Canada's Dating Coach. My listener shout out this week is to Laura. Thank you so much, Laura. You left a lovely 5-star review titled Amazing with several exclamation marks. Laura writes, "This is a superb podcast. The quality of Carmen's questions and presence with her guests is next level. A favorite for deep thinking and soul nourishment." Aw, thanks, Laura. Next level, I'll take it. I always appreciate reviews in the App Store and also when you leave feedback in the podcast inbox. The Numinous Podcast is a proud supporter of the People's Public Health Education Campaign. Remember, wearing is caring. The SARS-CoV-2 virus, aka COVID, is airborne and asymptomatic carriers spread the disease. That's according to research by America's National Institutes of Health. Wear your mask, especially indoors. And finally, this is a brief message just to all the folks who've ever been a member of the Numinous Network. If you really resonated with the way I hold space, there are a couple of spots left for my facilitation training happening in June, July. Applications are now open. Learn all about it by clicking on the Trainings tab on my website, carmenspagnola.com. CarmenSpagnola. Until next time, take care.